So for today's project, we're going to be painting the Ork Kommando Boss Nob from the Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team Octarius set. Now I was going through all my paints and I found this lot. These are all enamel modelling paints, which are used a lot when it comes to scale modelling. But you never see them when it comes to painting minis. Now one thing you will often hear is that people saying that if you use enamel paints you'll get a glossy finish. But these paints come in a range of different finishes. You've got matte, you've got satin, you've got gloss, you've got metallics. You've also got these metal coat ones which you can polish up to make them shinier. But can you paint this with these? Let's find out. Now I've not used these paints in years, so some of them may be completely dead. Let's have a look. Now if you've not used these before, if you open up an enamel tin, you'll often find that it's completely separated. And you've got like a big gloopy bit in the bottom with a load of liquid on top. All you need to do is get a spare bit of sprue or an old paintbrush handle or whatever and give it a really good stir. As you stir it, you'll start getting right down to the bottom and you'll dredge up all the gloopy stuff at the bottom. That's the paint pigment. If you keep stirring it, it will eventually resolve that separation and turn back into paint. Quite thick paint, but still paint. Therefore, what we want to do is use some enamel thinners to thin that paint down to a consistency that's good for what we want to do. You know it's kind of ready when you stir it up and there's no globs there and it kind of just flows straight off the bit of sprue. Now on the flip side, this is an old matte black and this is completely dead. There's no liquid in here at all, it's completely dried up. So that's one for the bin. The rest of them seem okay. Now this is a complete experiment, I've never done this before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try using a couple of droplets of different colours and then use an old paintbrush to mix them together to make a gradient from very dark through to kind of a highlight kind of colour. Now the only black I've got left is a satin black, and when I mix it in that might give the matte colours slightly more sheen to it. But with this one you want a little bit of sheen on the skin and it might just make the orc look like sweating or he's been climbing through a swamp or something. So for cleaning my brush as well as activating the paint, I'm going to use some Humbrol enamel thinners. Now it needs to be enamel thinners, not acrylic thinners for obvious reasons. So I'm going to put a few drops of enamel thinners into an old and cleaned out tea-light casing. So for this phase I'm going to use a two brush technique. So one brush is going to be a round pointed brush, but this is going to be a synthetic brush rather than a sable brush, for example. And the second brush is another synthetic brush, but it's a flat brush. So what I do is I use the round brush to lay the paint on where I want it to be, and then I kind of smudge it and feather it out with a flat brush. Now doing this way can really help to blend the colours really easily, and you can layer the paints up. So one thing I'm finding with these paints is they're kind of a halfway house between like oil paints, which take quite a long time to dry, and acrylic paints, which dry very, very quickly. So you've got a bit of working time. This means you can blend them out a lot easier, but you can still layer them up, so you can build the layers of colour up as you go. So on the arm here, I'm going to use a darker green, but I'm not going to cover the entire thing. The bits that are going to be in deep shadow, I'm going to leave them almost as that dark grey primer, or give a very slight covering, so give it a little bit of green, but largely keep that dark grey shadow. Once I've got that, I start to add a bit more of that coppery green into the mix. Then use a second brush, the flat brush, to feather it out, to smudge it in essentially, and it seems to be blending really nicely. You can't see the layers, it almost looks like it's a part of that original green. I'll keep building up to that highlight coppery pale colour. Now this is blending in a lot better than I was actually expecting. I was quite pleasantly surprised. What I'm finding is the paint is starting to dry on the tip of the brushes, and especially on the round brush they're getting a little bit of tip curl. But a quick swish in the thinners and it's good to go again. So look at this, I'm actually genuinely surprised and really pleased with this as a first try. And yeah, and if you've never done this before, it's worth a try. It's really simple, a lot easier than I was expecting, and the result you get is quite good. Now if you want to try some of these paints out for yourself, I'll put an affiliate link down in the description for you. So using the enamels to blend works really well, even over a base of an acrylic primer. I wonder if I can use it to add in some texture on his backpack, as well as bring in some acrylics on the rest of the model. But that is for the next video. I'll see you there.